Ryan, how long are you gonna stay single? It's time you find a gentleman for yourself, said Ryan's best friend, stuffing a handful of chips in her mouth. Right, we both are committed, only you left in our trio. Ryan's another best friend reason, applying nail paint. Ryan sighed, glancing between her two childhood besties. Guys, please don't drag me into this mess. I'm a better like this. I don't want any boyfriend or whatever. She rolled her eyes. Oh, come on, Juan. It's the right age and time to date. I mean, if you don't want to be in a serious relationship, then go on dates. Perhaps you will find someone compatible for yourself. She mused and Zara bobbed her head in agreement. She's right, and I know someone who I think is perfect for you. He's my boyfriend's best friend. I'm going to call my boyfriend and fix your dinner date today itself. Juan's eyes widened when she pulled out her cell phone to make a call. She snatched her phone from her hands. Relax, guys. Why should rush? It's not like I'm aging at double speed. It will happen when it's supposed to be happen. I don't want to waste my time in going on blind dates and all. I'm not interested. Tell the truth, Ryan. Are you already in a relationship or hiding from us? I swear, Ryan, if that's the case, you can't even imagine what we are going to do to you. They both narrowed their eyes at her whilst she blinked nervously and looked everywhere but them. You know it's not true. Why would I hide anything from my besties? You will be the first one to know. She mentally praised herself for not shuddering, but at the same time, guilt rushed through her veins for lying to her best friends, who was there for her in every thick and thin. Okay, if you're saying so, but you have to prove you are saying the truth by going on the date in the evening. Guys, I. Either you go or we won't talk to you. Yes. But, okay, fine. They jumped in excitement and hugged her from either sides. But promise me, if I didn't like him, you won't force me to go on any other blind date. She raised her little pinky finger and they intertwined their fingers with hers. The commotion in the classroom came to an end. A thick silence spread across the room when the professor entered inside the class. The students greeted him and he gave a curt nod. His eyes keenly observed the student, stopping at wine. His gaze lingered at her for a few moments before he tore his gaze away and focused on his lecture. Wyan, who noticed his eyes on her, drew in a deep breath to calm her racing heart. That's all for today, everyone. I hope you guys are preparing proper notes of every day's lecture. He stated, and some students gave positive response while some grumbled in annoyance. Yes, Professor Kim, I am making notes on daily basis, but I have a doubt regarding yesterday's lesson. Can you help me with this? She innocently asked, but she was anything but innocent. Being the generous professor he is, he nodded and walked towards her desk. She forwarded her book towards him. He slightly leaned down on her desk, explaining the asked out, but rather than paying attention to what he was saying, she was busy oogling on him. But all of this didn't like by someone who was throwing pointed daggers at them. Only if looks can kill, Sophia would have burned into ashes. Wine, are you okay? She placed her hand on Wine's shoulder. Yes, what would happen to me? She gritted out. Her gaze remained stuck at them. You're looking like you want to kill her. Is everything okay? Wine blinked her eyes and tore her gaze away from them, realizing she was staring more than necessary. She cleared her throat and smiled slightly. Yes, I'm okay. I was just thinking something. Though Mia wasn't convinced, nevertheless nodded her head. I don't know why I am even doing this. She mumbled to herself, giving last few touches of her makeup. Only if he agreed to disclose about our marriage to Mia and Zara, I wouldn't have to face the situation. She stood upright and looked at her reflection in the mirror. She was wearing a teal dress which reached below her knees. The minimal makeup was enhancing her natural beauty even more. Satisfied by her looks, she took a last glance at herself and exited her room. Entering inside the living room, her eyes fell on her arranged husband Kim Seokjin, who was sitting on couch surrounded by books. She mentally rolled her eyes and silently moved towards the shoe rack. Taking out her heels, she put them on. She was about to move out when his deep, husky voice reached her ears, stopping her movement. Where are you going? She turned around facing him, but his eyes were glued to the book he was reading. Are you talking to me? She pointed at herself. He sucked a deep breath and lifted his gaze from the book to her face. Is there anyone except you? As far as I know, this couch weighs and these walls don't talk. Vine rolled her eyes at his cocky remark. I am going on a date, she blurted out before she could control herself. He raised his eyebrows, blankly staring at her. She felt small under his intense stare. Actually, Mia and Zara set a blind date for me. I tried to deny, but they are stubborn, and I can't even tell them I am married to you. She explained, but she didn't know why she was giving explanation when he didn't ask for one. He stared at her without saying anything. One expected him to stop her from going, but he averted his eyes back to the book. Okay, he mumbled in an undertone, but Vine heard it. Vine scoffed. She felt her anger growing, bubbling up inside her head, witnessing his indifferent behavior. She glared at him and stomped away from there, shutting the front door with a thud. Entering inside the lavish restaurant, Vine's eyes roamed around the crowded area trying to spot her date until her eyes caught a boy sitting alone at the far corner. Without thinking twice, she made her way towards his table. Excuse me, Chao Nu? The boy nodded with a smile and stood up. Vine right, he extended his hand for a handshake. Vine smiled and shook hands with him. He pulled a chair for her like a gentleman. Mumbling a small thanks, Vine settled down. He sat down across her. Vine fidgeted with her fingers as she felt awkward sitting in front of him on a date when she had a husband. He tried to initiate a conversation, but she gave short replies which felt forced. As Onwo sensed her indifference, he stopped after some tries. The air felt heavy with awkwardness. Vine squirmed on her seat uncomfortably. She felt bad for the boy next to her, but she couldn't do anything but being sad for her husband's behavior earlier. You didn't want to come here, right? He asked, after which felt a long silence. Vine blinked in nervousness. No, it's not, she sighed. My friends forced me to come here. I'm so sorry for wasting your time, Unwu, but I'm not looking for a soulmate. She breathed out after explaining to him, her eyes fixated on the glass of water on the table as she waited for him to throw it on her face. We can be friends, right? Wine looked at him surprised, looking at her with a charming smile. So, friends? He extended his hand in front of her. She chuckled at joining her hand with his. The ambience seemed to be relaxing a little as it felt like a heavy burden had lifted off her shoulder. Let's order something. I'm really hungry. A heartfelt laugh slipped from her throat when his stomach grumbled due to hunger. He too laughed along. His cheeks turned red in embarrassment. Ordering her food, Vine looked around and her eyes stopped at a particular person sitting two tables away. He was looking oddly familiar, but his face was covered with the magazine he was holding. Vine squinted her eyes and tried to see his face, but it was completely shielded by the magazine. Weird, she mumbled when she noticed him holding the magazine upside down. Vine, your food. Her attention diverted to Unwu, who pointed at her food. She smiled and glanced at the man last time before taking in. Vine came back home but was confused when she didn't find him there. Where did he go? She pulled out her phone to call him when she watched him entering inside from the front door. But what caught her eyes was his clothes. He was wearing the same clothes as the weird man in the restaurant. It didn't take her long to understand he was the weird man. She smirked and stood in front of him, blocking his way. He raised his eyebrows. Where did you go? Somewhere. He tried to walk past her, but she sprayed her arms, stopping him. He gave her an annoyed look. What? I know you went to the restaurant. You were following me, ain't you? She asked, narrowing her eyes. Don't flatter yourself, the world doesn't revolve around you. He flicked her forehead and squid towards his room. She winced and rubbed her forehead. Turning around, she yelled, I know you were there, you can't fool me. She huffed in irritation when he ignored her remark and disappeared in his room. Jin came out of his room and stepped towards his study room. After upteamed failed trials of falling asleep, he decided to read a book. As he was passing from Ryan's room, he heard a faint voice from inside. He didn't want to eavesdrop her conversation, but curiosity got the best of him. He tiptoed towards the door, which was slightly open. He peeked inside and found her laying on a bed, holding her phone to her ears. Try to understand, guys. He knows my type. She stated in annoyance as her besties were nagging her to date Unwo. Then what is your type? My type, she thought for some time and rolled on the bed so that she was now laying on her stomach. She stared at her wedding picture, which was placed on the nightstand. My ideal type is someone wearing black three-piece tuxedo, hair gel perfectly with exposed forehead, veiny hands, beautiful eyes, pink plump lips, and yeah, someone who wears round reading glasses. And I'm dead. She dramatically banged her head on the mattress and heard them laughing. Why? There's no one like this. Your standards are quite high. Either lower your standards or stay single forever. There is someone, and that someone is my husband. I don't need to lower my standards. She wanted to scream, but they stay silent, smiling to herself. Okay, guys, good night. I want to sleep. She yawned and hung up after hearing their replies. She glanced at her wedding photo, more like gogged on her handsome husband, and didn't know when she fell asleep. I am not doing it because of her, he murmured to himself, combing his hair back, exposing his forehead. He was wearing black shirt with matching trousers. The sleeves of his shirt were rolled till his elbows, revealing his veiny hands. I am not doing it because she said so, he reiterated, putting on his round reading glasses. He looked at his reflection in the mirror and couldn't stop himself from blowing a flying kiss and exited the room. Stepping inside the living room, he came across Van, who was wearing her shoes hastily. He intentionally cleared his throat to gain her attention. She looked up and her breath hissed at the breathtaking view. He was looking no less than a Greek god. No doubt he looks good every day, but today was different. He had some extra radiance that held her spellbound. He cleared his throat once again and fixed his glasses. One stepped back to reality and looked away from him. He waited for some words of praise from her, but she fled away from there. He scoffed in disbelief. How can she just leave without complimenting me? He sulked. You said you didn't get ready for her. His subconscious mind mocked him. I did not, okay? He snapped back and left for the university, now with a sour mood. Jin let out an exhausted sigh after having back to back classes. He was irritated since morning, and not having any lecture in Ryan's class was making him more agitated. He descended the stairs to go to his cabin, his ears perked up, hearing some giggles. The voice seemed familiar to him. He looked around until his eyes caught the sight of Ryan laughing, standing at the base of stairs. He felt frown forming between his forehead when he saw a guy along with her. His back was facing him. He descended few stairs and a scowl took over his features when he found Unwo with her. His eyes flickered with jealousy. His grip on the books he was holding tightened and he skipped the stairs, marching towards them. Kim Wyan, he yelled, startling the duo. Wyan turned around and gulped, seeing him fuming in anger whilst Unwo was confused. Help me carrying these books to my cabin, he greeted out, clearing between her and Unwo. She nodded and took the two light books he was holding and walked towards his cabin without protesting. He was looking damn scary, and she didn't want to piss him off even more. Jin glared at Unwoo and walked behind her. Wan quickly placed the box on his table and quietly tried to move away, but Jin held her arm and pinned her to the nearby wall. She gasped at his sudden action and peered at him, who was looking angry yet hot at the same time. What were you doing with him, and above all, what he was doing here? Didn't you tell him you are married? He formed his jaw. Wine gulped audibly and batted her eyelashes innocently. He came to return my wallet that I forgot last night, but wait, how do you know him? She crooked her eyebrows, looking at him suspiciously. You did follow me last night, didn't you? She playfully glared at him, but his next move left her blushed like crazy. She snaked her hand on her waist and yanked her towards himself. An airy gasp slipped from her throat as she placed her hand on his chest in reflex. Blood rushed upward to her cheeks as her face flushed. He smirked in contentment as he ducked down her eyes shyly. His other hand reached out to tuck her loose tresses behind her ear. A current rushed through her spine. She slowly lifted her gaze. She forgot to breathe when her eyes met his. Her eyes drank in his features keenly. He was handsome, but he looked ethereal with that close proximity. She was hypnotized by his beauty. Unconsciously, she lifted her hand and touched his cheek with her fingertips. He inhaled deeply, feeling her feathery touch. She moved her index finger to the middle of his forehead and slowly traced it down to his nose and more down to his upper lip. Her lips turned up, feeling the softness of his lips beneath her touch. As she tried to move her finger more down, he parted his lips, took her finger between his teeth, and bit it. She yelped, coming back to reality, and glared at him. Why did you do that? You were touching me inappropriately. He shrugged his shoulder, mischief dancing in his eyes. And what are you doing? Aren't you touching me inappropriately too? She gave him an offended look and tried to remove his hands from her waist, but he tightened his grip even more. I am touching what's mine. I have right to touch you as your husband, he reasoned. Then I also have right to touch you as your wife, she countered. No wife goes on blind dates, and no husband says okay when his wife is forced to go on a blind date. She glared at him. Silence spread across the room as they stood there holding each other, staring intensely. Smitten by her enchanting features, he leaned closer. Her breathing accelerated and she closed her eyes. She waited to feel the softness of his lips on hers when she felt his hot breath on her skin. She licked her lips in anticipation. She fluttered her eyes open when she felt him pecking her nose. Be ready, I am taking you out tonight, he whispered softly and pecked her nose once again. As in a date? Her lips twisted in excitement. Yes. Saying so, he held her arm, opened the door, and motioned her outside. Her jaw dropped when he closed the door on her face. Jerk, she yelled. He opened the door slightly and peeked his head out. Same to you. Don't forget the date and wear red. He asserted out and closed the door. Oh, I can't even get mad at him. She smiled shyly and hopped towards her class.